What if we told you that the Amazon rainforest is getting destroyed at an alarming rate, and that the famed 2019 fires that set the Amazon ablaze could lead to the entire rainforest getting cleared, leading to dire consequences for Brazil and the rest of the world? The Amazon is dying, which will have serious consequences if the Brazilian government doesn't step in. But why is the rainforest so essential for us? And what is causing it to shrink at such a worrying rate? The Amazon is an important part of the world's ecosystem, and it covers 5,500,000 kilometers squared, which is most of the Amazon basin. While most of the forest lies in Brazil, around 60% of it, the rest covers areas across 9 different nations. These are Peru, which has 13% of it, Colombia, which claims 10%, and Bolivia, Ecuador, French Guiana, Guyana, Suriname, and Venezuela. As you can see, Brazil has the upper hand when it comes to deriving benefits from the rainforest, but at the same time it also has the most responsibility, which is where the problem lies. The activities carried out in the country have led to so much of the rainforest being lost. What could have caused a rainforest as large as the Amazon to shrink? Picture this. The Amazon has about half of the world's remaining rainforests. It also has the most extensive and biodiverse expanse of tropical rainforest, with over 390 billion trees from 16,000 species. Apart from that, there are at least 438,000 species of plants, with many more undiscovered. Its role in the ecosystem is so crucial that the Amazon rainforest has been called the lungs of the world. This is because it traps vast amounts of carbon dioxide and releases oxygen into the atmosphere. The Amazon River, which is 6,400 kilometers, is the second longest river in the world, also holds 20% of the entire freshwater resources. But unfortunately, the Brazilian government hasn't been able to protect this precious land. The problem started as early as the 1980s, when the government noticed how the amount of deforestation had reached a worrying level. But what caused the government to ignore its effects in the first place? The root lies in the vast resources the rainforest held in its depths. In the 1970s, Brazil's military regime saw the Amazon as an untapped gold mine and started projects to enter the previously inaccessible areas. The first step they took was the construction of the Trans-Amazonian Highway, which was introduced in 1972. That highway, which is 4,000 kilometers long, is the third longest in the country and cuts across the Amazon rainforest. This would provide a gateway into some of the most remote parts of the forest, and it was a necessary decision. At the time the project was introduced, Brazil's population was mostly concentrated in southeastern cities like Rio de Janeiro and Sao Paulo. The government wanted to expand the economy and started paying people to occupy land along the planned highway deep in the rainforest. Obviously, the people living there needed to sustain themselves, which sparked a cattle rush. Cows were raised to sell as beef, and every time a cleared plot of land ran out of pasture, they'd move on to the next one. This started a chain of events that led to an alarming rate of deforestation, which reached an all-time high of 20,000 kilometers squared by 2004. The devastation was so extreme that it became known as the Arc of Deforestation. Today, it refers to 500,000 kilometers of land from the east and south of Para, running westwards to the states of Mato Grosso, Rondônia, and Acre. And the issue would only get worse. As meat consumption increased around the world, Brazilian farmers saw another opportunity and started planting soybean, a high-protein feed for animals. Soybean production grew in the 1990s, and people rushed to buy land from cattle farmers. This created an entire chain of destruction. First, land in the rainforest would be cleared out to make room for cattle. Eventually, the pasture would run out, prompting owners to sell the land to soybean farmers. They would then clear out more land in the Amazon, often illegally, to move their cattle. Around 80% of the total deforestation is a result of the cattle sector. This cycle continued, and while the economy boomed, the rainforest suffered. Although the rate slowed down between 2004 and 2015, they accelerated again in the coming decades. Between 2017 and 2018, around 7,900 kilometers squared of forest cover was deforested. There was an 88% jump between 2018 and 2019, and Brazil's National Institute for Space Research also reported that deforestation rates were the highest in over 12 years between August 2019 and July 2020. Amid fierce resistance from environmental groups, the situation accelerated to a point where the government had to step in to set things right. It was Lula da Silva's government that started taking steps to rectify the situation, with Environment Minister Marina Silva taking the lead in the fight against deforestation. She said they realized this wasn't a problem they could fix with emergency measures alone. It started by increasing the amount of rainforest that was under protection. Previously, only 28% was reserved, but Silva's plan saw more oversight and banned business activities. It only allowed activities like nut harvesting and rubber tapping, as they both didn't cause extensive damage to the rainforest. There was also more land demarcated for indigenous people, since they preserved the forest better, even in the space of outside pressures. The government planned to focus on the sustainable use of the forest to preserve natural resources by combining economic development and ecology. Eventually, almost 47% of the Amazon rainforest was put under protection. The government enforced the Forest Code to further maintain the remaining land's sustainability. This meant that landowners could only clear 20% of their private land, and the Forest Service oversaw the law under the Environmental Ministry. The Brazilian Institute of the Environment and Renewable Natural Resources, or IBAMA, also started a crackdown on illegal activities and carried out several operations to track criminal organizations. There was much progress as deforestation rates fell by half by mid-2006. Then came another milestone, the soy moratorium. As companies faced pressure from environmental groups around the world for their part in deforestation, many of them came together to sign an agreement in 2006. It stated that while they would continue to operate existing farms, they wouldn't buy anything from newly deforested land. A similar agreement was signed by beef companies 3 years later in 2009, and other nations also poured in money to contribute to preserving the rainforest. It's obvious why other countries have a vested interest in the Amazon, and Brazil was also able to make its beef and soy industries more sustainable by using better farming techniques, so everyone benefited. But all of this effort almost came crashing down in 2019 with the infamous forest fires which swept the Amazon and caused international concern. And it didn't happen overnight. Part of it has to do with Brazilian politics, as the Ruralists, a party that represented the interests of those involved in agribusiness, gained power. Since gaining traction in the 2000s, the party had already had the Forest Code weakened and had IBAMA's budget slashed. But it came to a cliff when Jair Bolsonaro, a supporter of the Ruralists, was elected in 2019. He worked to weaken the Environment Ministry and transfer the oversight of the Forest Code to the Agricultural Ministry. Since the slash and burn method is a common way of clearing rainforests and his reign facilitated it, almost 30,000 fires were burning in the Amazon in August of 2019. The situation was first reported in June or July of that year by the National Institute for Space Research and gained international attention when NASA asserted that the situation was worrisome. Can you imagine the level of destruction these massive fires would have caused to the numerous species of animals and fauna in the rainforest? To give you an idea of how bad it was, satellite images showed that smoke from the fires had darkened the city of Sao Paulo despite being thousands of kilometers away from the forest. By the 29th of August, the INEPE reported that around 80,000 fires were burning around Brazil, which was a 77% year-to-year increase in the same tracking period. Around 40,000 of these were in the legal Amazon. The Amazon, the biggest carbon dioxide sink in the world, caused international concern. President Bolsonaro initially waved all allegations off as speculation, but the 45th G7 summit saw pressure from other countries. With a threat to reject the EU-Mercosur Association Agreement, Bolsonaro was finally forced to take action and dispatch 44,000 troops to put out fires. He also decreed a 60-day period where no fires were allowed. The fact remains that the problem of the Amazon rainforest isn't just the Brazilian government's issue alone. It affects the entire world, with studies suggesting that if something isn't done soon, the forest will reach a tipping point, after which it will be completely savannized or desertified. The destruction of the Amazon rainforest is everyone's problem, and steps to cap deforestation are crucial at this point. Thank you for joining us on this fiery trip across the Amazon rainforest. If you want to help us bring more exciting facts to you, support us by hitting that like button and subscribing to our channel. Until we meet again, keep exploring.